You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a more modern approach to selling, the application of virtual and hybrid selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, one that's a bit different to normal, because I'm welcoming back Ben Elijah. So Ben, hi.
Hello, Fred. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. And hopefully I'm going to be saying the same at the end of this, because what Ben has offered to do, and I'd be his hand off on this, is to take me through how he would elicit a story from a client. So if you listen to the last podcast, we started talking about storytelling. He very briefly sort of gave a structure for this. And then after we finished recording, I said, oh, this stuff is brilliant. He said, well, why don't we do another? And like I say, this is why we're here now. So yeah, it kind of works. I'm not sure who's going to do more work. Who's going to do more work on this, Ben? Me or you?
Oh, definitely you.
Oh, okay. So it is different to an all podcast where I just ask a couple of questions and you guys have to think about what it is. So just before you tell us the process, so I want to kind of, we need to make this really clear what's going on. Before you tell us the process, let's just think about the method. So to just people hadn't listened to the previous podcast, why storytelling? Why is it so good?
So storytelling is thinking. It's not a subset of thinking. It is thinking. It's how people perceive themselves in their world. It's how businesses effectively, that's the key word, communicate who they are and what they do relative to their customers. It's how human beings process information. It's how we process information overload. So storytelling is, in my opinion, it's fundamental. It's also something that I think people struggle with. It's one reason I do what I do. And I think people struggle with it because to do storytelling correctly, it almost runs counterintuitive to some of the things that we do as entrepreneurs, where we have to spend all of our time thinking about ourselves and our products and our operational duties, whereas great storytelling is always customer centric.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And when you say storytelling is thinking, I mean, my opinion on this stuff and what salespeople should be doing is helping customers to think. Questioning is a good tool for that. But what you're saying is there's other stuff in your armory, if you like, that you can be doing to help with that. Storytelling being one of those. Okay, so we're going to go through a process where you're going to help me, you're going to make me, you're going to elicit from me the story that I can be using with customers, essentially. So what is that process? Let's just sort of signpost that. And then as we're going through, we can just you can say, hey, we're going to this stage now, which I know you wouldn't normally do in a coaching conversation. It would just flow really naturally. So what are we going to go through?
Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is the customer.
Yeah.
So don't start with why, start with who.
Yeah.
So I want to understand a little bit more about, well, actually, before we go into that, I think it's probably quite useful for maybe you to just give me some context as to why having a story is important for where you're at right now and what you're hoping to accomplish with it. Once I understand that, we're then going to talk a little bit about, say, the customer, who they are, what are they trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a little chat about figuring out what I like to call the map. Every story is a path through a map.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try to understand that map. What was the different, what are the different options available to the customer, perhaps the old way of them achieving a particular goal. Is that still viable or not? What's changed? What is the new way, the new path through the map, so to speak? And then let's talk about the destination. Once we get there, what do we do? Where can we go wrong or right on our path? Where do we What's the route to failure as we try to play the new game, so to speak. Um, and once we have that, we really then have the core, the essence of a great story. Um, and we can start fleshing out with more detail. We can condense it down into a 2 sentence statement. Um, as a good story, once you have that, it's like the backbone, the spine of your business strategy. And then you can expand from that, things like your go-to-market, whatever your content, messaging, even product and service development. Um, so if we can figure out that backbone, that spine, um, that would be the goal for today. So we'll go through some questions. I'll focus it, as I say, starting with the customer. Um, you know, let's talk about their status quo, what that looks like, their existing option set, things that have then changed in their world, and then perhaps the new route through the map that you might be offering.
Brilliant. Okay. Love it. Love it. Right. And so if you, I'll try. So I suspect my brain will be in different places once we get going. So if you can be flagging where we are and how we're going through each of these steps, that'd be really cool.
Excellent. Well, let's start with you then, before
Oh,
we go into before we get into the meat of this. So, why do you need a story? What's going on?
Um, I guess it's about my ambition, really. If you want to be like that. Um, at the end of webinars I deliver, I make no bones about the fact that I want to be known as the person that brought collaborative selling and that way of working to the way that the sales community operate. So it's pretty ambitious, if you like.
Okay.
A little catchphrase of good people doing good things in a good way. Might be another way of distilling that. Um, and look, when you're training this stuff, you've got to practice what you preach. So if I'm not getting bang up to date on the best ways of doing stuff, what right have I got in training salespeople? And ultimately, I want to sell more, mate.
Excellent.
That's probably the order I did that in, isn't it? Because that probably is actually the order.
Okay. Well, look, good sales question to ask you is what happens without a story? Or if we don't define a good story, what happens?
Um, I guess either people don't understand what it is you're doing, or probably more so because again, I understand that stories are about trying to pitch things into a more emotional level. They might understand it, but they might not care.
Mm,
I suppose that's the latter hurts more, doesn't it? And I guess that's probably what hits a lot of salespeople. In that they're saying all the stuff they do, and it's wonderful, but people are like, yeah, whatever. Um, I don't really want to be in that situation if I can help it, and I don't want my customers to be either, obviously. So,
You know, it's so important that you said that, because one of the mistakes people make with stories is that they make themselves the hero of the story, right? So, for example, when they talk about what's the new way of doing things? Well, it's them, it's their product. Whereas the good story has the customer as the hero. And actually, if the customer will get value from the story, even if they don't buy from you, because you've been fairly sort of vendor agnostic, and you can sort of externalize the new way of doing things as sort of like a generalized, or the route. You don't have to take me with you to go on this new route. But hopefully by telling a good story, I've earned your trust enough that you want to take me with you. That's a much more effective way to work. And it's going to make people care about it a lot more because it's not so transparently a pitch.
yeah, I'm totally down with this. I mean, in my first book, I talk about hero's journey,
Yeah.
and use this as a way just to get your head around the fact who should you be putting where, and somebody else will do it. Let me come and save. Let me ride in on my silver charger and all this. It's like no. So no, preaching to the converted.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, let's talk about your customer then. Let's start with who, because this will give us a sense for who our hero is, and um, you know and to put us into their mind for a few moments. Could you do that for me?
Sure. So it's B2B complex sales. By complex, I'll sort of use the more traditional way of defining that, which is a longer sales cycle, more people in the decision-making unit, and kind of a sophisticated solution. So it's got lots of working parts. Um, the person that I'd want to hear the story more than anything else would be a sales director or VP of sales.
Okay. Be the sales leader.
Yeah, I mean, for CEO, if someone in C-suite heard it and it kind of got them thinking, I mean, hopefully they are reasonably focused in on sales. That's not a bad thing. And salespeople themselves hearing it and going, "Hey, yeah, this guy's speaking sense. That's where we want to be," and putting pressure up. But if we're sat around a campfire and all the people around me were sales directors, sales VPs, that would be great. As regards industry, I'll tell you it's not. It's not SaaS. I'm probably one of the few sales traders in the world that doesn't really care about working in that space. Um, uh, well, if everyone's zigging, you zag, don't you? Is one reason that everybody is wanting to work in that. But actually, it's the way some of that selling is set up doesn't, I think, naturally lend itself to the way that I would want people to work.
Right.
It's actually who I care about more as well. Are people involved in a more traditional sale? It's where I've done most of my work, is where I'm from. And it's the guys I'm worried about really getting left behind. These are the ones I want to pull up with the new way, if you like. So by that, it's people who are selling industrial products, engineering products. They might be selling food ingredients. They might be selling pharma. They might be selling medical devices. So there's a lot of world outside of SaaS, to be honest. I'm probably not niched enough, but it's that kind of person that I'd be wanting to speak to.
So give me a little bit more here. I mean, we've got, let's say, VP of sales. Give him a name or her a name, and tell me a little bit more about their situation and their frustrations. Let's create a little character.
Okay. I'm gonna make him a her. Oh, well, I got a bit of stick for writing the book and having two male characters in it, didn't I? Harry and Larry. So we'll have Sally, sales director. And what is she frustrated about? Okay. So I have done some thinking around this, and there's three things that I can start to say that Sally will be thinking, yeah, oh yeah. That's a bit when Harry met Sally. I've just realised that wasn't on purpose, by the way, mate. And these are these things you might have heard me say before, which is busy, oldie-wildy, muddled mindset. And I'll say, okay, so Sally, busy, busy, busy. So do you recognize this in your team, that they're running around doing lots and lots of stuff? They're kind of incredibly active. They're putting lots of time and effort and energy into stuff, but they're wasting most of it because it's not getting the results you want. Yeah. They're getting tired. They're getting stressed. So they might be thinking about leaving, or certainly the environment that's they're operating in isn't one that you would want to create as a leader. Okay. And basically, it's just the focus isn't quite right. But that'll be one thing. And when I've told that,
that's being very busy.
That's busy, and I sometimes get a nod to that.
Okay.
And I thought, well, this could be the fact that it's related to being oldie worldy. Now, these are just Fred labels, okay? Oldie worldy is just they're using old-fashioned techniques. So by that, what they're doing, the sales approach they're applying is probably too self-centered. Okay. They're trying to be the hero. They're talking about their products, their services, their organization. It's the we type thing. And they're not putting the customer at the heart of what they should be doing. It can also be people who are selling something a little bit more technical, and lots of salespeople who come from a technical background do this. They get right down to the weeds. They get to too much detail. And they start talking about stuff which is almost like beyond the scope of what they need to. And they can be boring people to like, I don't need all this stuff from you. Some of those come from passion, actually. So it's almost forgivable. The one that I can't forgive is the last part of the oldie world, which is using old-fashioned stuff that does not work. Not only does it not work, it actually drives customers away because it's antagonizing them now.
Well, let's get to that let's get into we'll get into the weeds of that in a moment. But the third part was the muddled mindset.
Yeah, this is where, and again, I think the sales leader's probably got more responsibility for this, or the organization has, because the organization might be saying something like, "We solve solutions, we give solutions, and we solve problems. We're consultative. Our salespeople are trusted advisors. That's how we operate. It's what we do. We're wonderful." Yeah, for 28 days of the month, and then come the end of the month, it's like, we haven't sold enough. Right, get out there and sell this stuff. Sell, sell, sell. Discount. Go push, push, push. So it's basically going from consultative to transactional overnight. And then so the manager's going, "What am I supposed to be coaching here?" I'm assuming they're coaching, right? But am I coaching people to be better at consult? Oh, it's a big assumption, I know. um, are they? Are we helping people to get better at that type of sale, or are we sat with a spreadsheet pushing them to do some numbers? I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing it, and the poor salesperson, I don't know how I'm supposed to operate. I'm now confused.
Let's pause there for a moment because Sally, you said Sally's frustrated about these things. But she won't be frustrated about those things if she's hitting her objectives and she's walking away thinking, "Oh, I've done a good job," even if those three things are present, presumably. So why does she care about it? Why are these things frustrating her?
Again, is Sally hitting objectives? And probably isn't. Hence, that is why might have kind of got brain looking at sales, training sales, improvement sales, performance, or is hitting them, but it's getting harder and harder and harder to do. It's kind of dragging a log through sand, and then the sand's getting wetter and the log's getting heavier, and it's sort of becoming so tough that, the kind of busy thing that the salespeople got, she's getting similar kind of symptoms, if you like. And it's like hard slog being in that position.
And look, common sense probably answers this question, but it's worth asking. The consequences to her of her world getting progressively harder, and I'm just wondering, is she a frog in slowly warming water, or is she suddenly realizing that the consequences are going to hit her soon? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, you can take this from business and personal, which is how all salespeople should be thinking anyway, isn't it? So from a business point of view, you're not hitting your targets, which means you're going to be under pressure, which means potentially you're going to lose your job. Yeah, no income, can't pay the mortgage. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So as you start moving from you're not hitting targets, not, staying in a job or not getting bonuses or that kind of thing, they do become very personal things because they're going to have an impact at home. Or even the professional impact, which is presumably Sally, and again, big presumption, is reasonably ambitious and might want to be moving up, or, it's kind of got all those effects. And actually feeling bad under pressure, it's not nice. Been there myself, it's not a good place. And that's part, I guess, part of my own mission is to help people not have to experience some of the downs.
Okay, so let's condense this a little bit now, because we can say, well, Sally, and if I'm overcooking this, let me know, but she's realized that there's some things going on that are about to create an extinction level event. And then that extinction level event could be an extinction level event, or it's going to create a bunch of professional roadblocks, long-term professional roadblocks for ambitious sales leaders. What do you think?
Yeah, like that.
Because now we've created a character and we've now created some potential conflict for that.
Yeah, and extinction event makes think of dinosaurs. That's something I use also in a webinar. I guess people think of favorite dinosaurs, which is a bit weird because it assumes they have a favorite dinosaur. But you'd be amazed when you're doing it virtually and you ask people to put it in chat. Everyone puts T-Rex. I think it probably isn't favorite. They probably don't want to type pterodactyl, but the point I'm making with that is it's not necessarily survival of the fittest or most intelligent. It's the ones that can adapt.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing. So yeah, the people who are suddenly getting that is like, oh, okay. And they are heightened, that their perception or their awareness is heightened, or if not, it's my job to heighten it. But I want to get the stories right.
So what I think we need to do now, we've created this sort of, I don't like the phrase compelling event, but we've created this threat, this conflict in the
Yeah.
mind of our character now. Um, the solution to those issues, the opposite of these problems, frustrations, consequences, is the job to be done for this person. So if realized extinction level events could mean something like, well, we need to survive the extinction level events.
Yeah.
And we need to create a pathway to, to selling in the 2030s. We
Yeah.
need to create a long-term sales career.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me. I mean, these are just some random ideas, but let's see if we can figure out the destination at the end of the journey here.
No, it certainly is. Again, I talk about the evolution of sales. Sales evolves all the time. And that's part of the solution, actually. From what we've done in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, there's bits which can take. But if you just take those, but don't necessarily take the next bit, which is what's going to move you into the 20s and beyond, and we're in 2022 now, so it's that, yeah, that's that job to be done. I mean, it's their role to be empowering and having the salespeople in the best possible position to be successful. I mean, if they're not, there's a whole new argument, isn't there, about that salespeople should take some responsibility for their own development as well. But
How could that?
I think it's part of your story, isn't it, Ben? But no, but there is, and that's what we'll do. It's like we want people to be fit for purpose in the way that sales is taking shape in the future. And again, some of the language I already use is that otherwise you are becoming irrelevant. And that's proven. It's so buyers, customers are searching a red-free experience. Why? Because they're not getting value from people and the interactions. They're trying to self-diagnose, do stuff on their own. Because people aren't good enough for what they're doing, So there's your extinction bit. It's proven in, figures in research.
So we can say surviving and thriving.
Yeah.
Through the 2020s into the 2030s.
Yeah.
Is our job to be done. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Go on, Carol. I was the only reason I prefer relevance. I don't know my language I have been using. Survive and thrive. It's people use that already, and I think me personally, it's like there's loads of stories out like that. So it's people have already told that. Oh, another survive thrive story, and then they multiplied, didn't they, through the 20s for the obvious reason. It is. I know what you're saying there, but yeah, it's kind of staying relevant or something like that. I think is probably a tag. I don't know. We're trying to get to your job here.
Well, but it's your.
But I could hear me telling the story. That's the point, and I need to hear myself tell it. So
absolutely. So is it staying relevant? Is it becoming relevant? Is it becoming more relevant, or is it becoming hyper relevant?
Well, basically, you've just asked how good a salesperson do you want to be.
Mm.
You can stay average. You could be slightly better. You could be really good. You could be superb. Be another way of framing how relevant you are.
So how would you explain that to my mum in a sentence? Or how would you sort of encapsulate those words in a sentence?
Some salespeople are really good at what they do because they help customers to think that they are the ones which are the most relevant to their customers, and hence the role they perform.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm just trying to think whether my mum would have understood that. Yeah, she's dead clever.
I think don't
She'd ask me to do it in Spanish as well. I'd be like,
oh, excellent. Don't include too much of the method in the job to be done. So
Mhm.
talk about making customers think.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that
Okay.
you want to create a sort of branching pathway of options. So you'd say, well, look,
Yeah.
and I don't want to um, preempt this too much, but you've already sort of given me the old game. The old route that people took
Mm.
was this strategy, which we need to name, which led to, busy, 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 oldie worldy and model mindset.
Mm.
And we'll figure out what that strategy is, because nobody goes out and says, right, well, I want to be busy, busy, busy. I want to do this. And I want to have a muddled mindset. But people might say, well, I have a strategy that I've been using for 20 years, which seem perfectly reasonable. But these things are, something has changed. Well, but this was a side effect. These three things were a side effect of that strategy, and something has changed, which
Yeah.
means that this side effect is now a lethal um, cocktail of venom, which is killing me. Um, so,
So is the model version, salespeople are in danger of becoming irrelevant because they're not very good at doing what they're supposed to be doing.
well, no, let's just say the job to be done is a positive vision, which is
Okay.
to say, um, you know, salespeople need to be hyper relevant to their customers to get through the 2020s into the 2030s.
Yeah.
What do you-
Okay. Yeah. I'm framing it positive language. I was negative there, wasn't
Yeah. Well, you're creating a
I?
vision.
Not a very good trait, is it?
It's like people, you give a vision and say to the sales director, look, this is where I hear people like you want to be.
Yeah. Salespeople need to be hyper relevant to survive.
No,
Okay.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
the 2020s. Um, okay. And then we say, well, that's fine, getting hyper relevant. Now, the old way of doing that was what that led to the side effect of being busy, 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 oldie worldy model mindset.
Um. So I kind of touched on it already. Sales has gone through a number of evolutions,
Mhm.
which we can look at, and you can. Okay, it's forced a little bit. Say in the 50s we did this, 60s we did this, 70s we did this, 80s we did this, 90s, noughties, 10. Yeah. What happens is, and we're not kind of getting into detail of that, people are often stuck at the last, at an evolution. Now, yeah, some people might be stuck in the 80s. Great music, awful way of selling. I mean, awful. That was all manipulative, close, close, close stuff. People might be stuck in the 90s. And you go, well, that's good, particularly if you've sort of moved into a more consultative approach. But that's 30 years ago.
Fred, no one in 2020, and no one in 2022 is actively, consciously choosing, you know what? My pathway to success is living in 1987. What's because what you're doing there is labeling
Okay.
something negatively. What is the thing, not the label?
So it's an old fashioned approach. Is that right? A not fit for purpose approach.
What is it?
It's, well,
Could it be
yeah,
like, could we be talking about, you know, the sort of company centric incentives? Could we be talking about,
yeah,
um, um, sort of process oriented pipelines? Could we be talking about, um, you know, um, sort of short term growth strategies? Something relative, and that's a little bit negative.
yeah.
Something
I totally,
sort of neutral that makes people think, "Oh, hang on, that was what I decided to do this morning," and you're you don't want to sort of
yeah, I see what you're doing there now. It's don't agitate at this stage. You want to just say that is it. Oh, yeah, I do that. Um, are we talking about having a traditional approach?
yes,
The traditional is okay.
yeah,
I mean, I've talked about being in traditional markets who've got a traditional approach. Cool, yeah, because we're traditional. That's good. That's what we do. always worked for us. Happy days. Well, not happy days, actually. Yeah. So the reason I'm saying traditional approach is because, yeah, I was trying to, I get trying to get, because I'm a geek about this stuff, aren't I? And in your traditional approach is if I understand it well, I will be able to say, you're stuck in the 80s, you're in the 90s. Actually, fair play. You're in the noughties,
Yeah.
but you're not ready for the more progressive approach, collaborative approach.
Could we say traditional approach is sort of focusing on, focusing on orthodox sales methods like, solution and Sandler and spin and bant and, all that stuff? What do you think?
Have you seen today's LinkedIn post?
Not yet. Is it going to give me an aneurysm?
It's a video entitled "Bad is Bollocks."
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to be punching the air with joy as I watch that.
I thought you might. As are many people that, like yourself, that I hang out with, that get that traditional, some of it is okay because it's foundational, but
let's
to be
name it.
progressive,
Let's name it. Let's name traditional as a label.
right? Traditional's the label.
So you could say traditional or orthodox, sales methods such as X, Y, and Z. What is X, Y, and Z?
Okay. Also, they're what I pull from the decades, such as being consultative. Do you want 3?
3 is a good number.
I know 3's normally a good one, isn't it? Right. Okay. And this might be interesting why I say it like this. So, such as having a solid process, being consultative, and value focused.
So,
because they're not necessarily wrong in themselves, and people are probably going to go, whoa, what? That is what we do. What's wrong with that?
Well, but that's perfect.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
But applied the way that, and this is where you don't need to be so specific, applied in the way that 99% of people apply them leads to busy, oldie, woldy, and muddled mindset.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I'm liking this a lot. Yes. Yeah.
But applied the way 99% of people. Good. Now, probably people might have known that. Probably 2 years ago, people are just like, yeah, so what, we're hitting our numbers. What's changed? Now, let's focus on the shift from the old way that means that it's no longer a strategy. And the tip I would give to you is the deeper in the subconscious this changed, the better. I see people, they try, with thinking of these shifts and say, did you know that there was a disease flying around the world between 20 and 22? It's like, oh, well, no shit. But if you tell people something that they've been feeling in their core and you've just put words to it for the first time, that becomes very powerful.
Customers have changed.
Okay.
And there's like an ABC of customer change. Customers are more advanced. Yep. So there's more information out there. That they can do a lot of the things that they want to do themselves. And so the salesperson's previous value was giving them information, just pure information, whereas actually that information is there. So if you rock up and just read a brochure to me or what I can find on your website, not bothered. That's why they're further down the buying cycle, which is why I'd say advanced. And like you try and do things, it's like, no, I've done this already. Stop trying to drag me backwards. I know what I want. So they're more biased. And by biased, I mean biased towards the way that they're trying to fix it, or maybe even the status quo. I mean, there's a whole bunch of biased things we could talk about this, and having a higher level of expectation. Customers are just sitting there as kings, aren't they? No, they're not. Because the C is that they're confused. Yeah, they live in the same VUCA world that we do. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. So actually, whilst they might be sitting pretty, they're not, because there's stuff going on that they are trying to figure out and can't.
So those are A, B, and C are consequences of something. What is that thing?
Okay.
Is it that, millennials are now in VP and head of positions? Is it that there's been something, someone's put something in the water. What's going on?
It's kind of information is one element of it. I think it's change, and change is a constant, but the speed of change has picked up. I mean, clearly, we've alluded to the fact that in 2020, there was something which massively pressed the fast forward button, but the speed of change was getting quicker anyway. COVID, no COVID, this stuff was happening. It's just that water that the frog sat in. It's getting a bit hotter quicker, but still it's not noticing.
You need to give the customer something more. You need to punch in the nose a little bit.
Right.
Could it be something like, I don't know why my mind's going to this, but your sales approach is sort of getting older, but your customers are getting younger. Because all of these things, the millennials want to do more research. They form their own opinions and they go out looking for confirmation bias. And their expectations lead to confusion.
Sales approach, it's older, customers younger.
Yeah. Consequence of that is A, B, and C.
There might be a thing around customers want to actually work closer, but your techniques are still make it too transactional. No, that's not quite right. The shift. So I just ABC's the consequence. So the shift.
In the deeper in the
so there's new ways of thinking about stuff. People's understanding of what's going on is developing. How you can do things better. The people are progressing. People are getting better at what they do. Customers haven't stood still to be your target.
Oh, that works.
There's some story and are expecting stuff a bit better. They've moved on in what they want.
Wasn't there some Gartner report that came out in late 2020, which suggested that 33% of B2B buyers wanted not a seller-free buying experience, and that number rose to just shy of 50% for younger buyers?
Yeah. But that's down to, I believe, the fact that the seller isn't bringing anything to the party. So I might as well cut the buyer out, the seller out, and carry on doing myself, because actually all I'm doing is saving myself time from wasting it with somebody who's not bringing me any closer to where I want to be.
So customers are increasingly seeing sellers as,
irrelevant.
Well, irrelevant at best and a hindrance at worst.
Yeah.
And that
pointless. Yeah.
Because those customers are more advanced, biased,
but confused, and you're not helping them advance quicker. You're pulling them backwards. You're not doing anything to change their bias.
And confused.
They want help with the confusion, and you're just not. That's why I like the ABCs.
Confused by the bad implementation of these ancient sales philosophies.
Customers have adapted. Customers have evolved.
Yes. Okay.
The meteors hit the customer planet. They will change. Meteors back to your planet.
We can tighten that up in a minute. Let's think about the new game. What are again, keep this vendor agnostic. Pretend you don't exist for a moment.
Yeah.
What game are the winners now playing?
They're playing a more collaborative style of selling.
Okay.
It's not completely agnostic.
Well,
because that's a job I found. But it is. But the collaborative style of selling is they want to work with people who will think like a partner, who will work in their best interests, who will co-create, who will shine the light on different perspectives and ways in which they can operate to make sense of the confusing environment, to get them already working quicker to where they want to be quicker. Some of the techniques that we've described are useful. They're like tools, within the toolbox to create that, but that needs a new mindset and new way of setting yourself up to act as more of a collaborative salesperson.
So why don't we, I think we can condense this now into, well, I think you've created yourself another bare bones of this story. Indulge me here for a moment, Fred. Maybe we've got something.
I will. Apply listening skills, Fred.
Okay. Senior sales leaders right now are seeing a series of extinction level events on their horizon. They want to get their people hyper relevant in order to get through the 2020s. Now, most of them have taken traditional best practice sales approaches, consultative selling, a process oriented, value focused in a sort of prescriptive way, but applied the way that 99% of them have applied it. It's created busy, oldie worldy model mindset. And that was okay. When, in the before times. But customers have changed. Their tolerance for salespeople is declining. Nearly half of buyers under 40 don't actually want to deal with a salesperson when given the choice, because those salespeople are, creating confusion. But the customers, of course, at the same time, they're more advanced now. They're doing their own research, forming their own biased opinions. So the old way of using the customer as a cash, of implementing processes that treated the customer as a cash cow no longer work. The new approach is to treat the customer not as a cash cow in your process, but as a partner in your process. How's that?
Bingo. I'm trying to write that down fast enough.
I'm glad we're recording this.
No, and it's going straight into transcribe. That is spot on. That is what I'm trying to say. You have said it in under a minute, 45 seconds, what takes me 45 minutes to do in a webinar. Now, okay, in the webinar, I will give more how to.
Yes.
That's, if the webinar's the film, that's the prequel, isn't it? That's the, not prequel, what do you call it? The trailer.
What does this story do for you? That we've now condensed this in 45 seconds. How are you going to use this?
I'm just going to post it every day on LinkedIn. No, look, okay, that was a facetious comment. Some way, shape, or form, if I'm not saying that, I'm wasting my time and my potential customers' time. Now, people don't, and so that's got to inform all my communication. So yeah, double check. Do my webinars say that? Yes, they do. Does social media say that? Yes, it does. Does what my podcast guesting do say that? Yes, it informs a whole lot. Does the product that I deliver ultimately help people do that? Yes, it does. But it's about the communication to get enough people in the traditional industries to realize it, to start saying, some things happened when I heard you say that. I want to know a little bit more. Okay, have a look at this scorecard, or come along to the 45-minute version of it. That's how I would use that. So it becomes a spine to everything.
And how do you feel now that we've done this? I mean, it's a process that sort of, I can tell, forced you to go through quite a lot of introspection about what you're doing and what you've been saying to your customers.
It did, to make sure what I've been saying is correct. Broadly, it has been. There's a little bits of refining.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff feels clearer. There's stuff I've said, and I might have been saying it in a clunky way. Someone who's supposed to be an expert in communication, that ain't a good thing. But now I think this is a really cool way to go, that's the core. Give me 45 seconds, that's what I'm going to say to you. Literally, almost verbatim. but that can be chopped and shaped and just used in different formats. So yeah, I'm really happy with that.
I'm glad it was helpful.
Well, best podcast. I mean, I really hope that people listening to this have followed, and even if you don't care about what my story is, bit weird. Why are you listening to Sales Day podcast? But the process that you were using there, Ben, it's so powerful. I mean, what, half an hour, just slightly over half an hour to take stuff. I don't know how long it normally take you. How long's a piece of string, I guess. A lot of my stuff is prepped, isn't it? Because I've read a book about it and deal with it on a regular basis, which can make it harder, I guess.
A lot of the difficulty that people face, again, it depends on the business. If you're naturally customer focused as you are, it's usually pretty easy to do this. I sometimes find organizations where, their approach is, to quote from an old Steve Jobs talk, think of all the clever technology and then figure out how to sell it. They often really struggle because, as Marcus Kauke often says, that in those businesses, the customers are sort of dangling at the end of a long chain of abuse.
Yeah.
And you're sort of forcing people to get into the habit of putting the customer first is different. So, for them, stories are more difficult, but I actually think even more essential.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And then again, when people hear about stories, they probably think, well, once upon a time, it's not. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. And I think, yeah, I'm very happy. You can tell, can't you? I'm transparent on that. No, that's brilliant. That, so we've gone slightly over time. I know you have to bounce because you got someone to do this for now. But no, very quickly then, where can people get in touch? Because hopefully people listening to this and going, God, that's dead easy. I haven't talked about it. It's easy because he's good at it, folks. So where can they get in touch?
So best place at the moment is probably LinkedIn. So Ben Elijah, I've got FRSA at the end of my name. So it's slightly easier for people to find me that way. But I do have a website at the moment, executivestory.io. I'm actually going to be changing that because the longer I've been doing this, the more I've been working with VCs and founders. So I'm actually changing my story and my brand to suit that, that these guys are seeing upward value from this. So that website may not be up for very much longer. So LinkedIn, probably the best place to find me for the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'll put the LinkedIn profile into the show notes. Ben, thank you. No, thank you so much for coming on again. I mean, thank you, personal thank you for really helping me get that stuff. It's cool. And now keep an eye on what I do, how I communicate. Ooh, and everyone else who's listening, there you go. How about that for accountability?
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
No, brilliant. Thanks a lot. We will speak again soon, sir.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, Fred Copestake. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for more and leave a review. If you didn't like it, also leave a review. It's all about feedback and learning.